After the death of King Themba, the entire community felt that the two brothers had reconciled and agreed to work together and rule the community as brothers. They never knew that Sizwe still had a hidden plan to eliminate his own brother and take over the throne as he already planned with his warriors. There in the shadows of the royal compound, Prince Sizwe was not mourning. His eyes gleamed with ambition as he gathered his most loyal warriors. "Tonight we take what is rightfully mine," he told them in a low voice. "Are you with me?" The warriors nodded, their hands on their weapons. They had long been promised power and riches if they helped Sizwe claim the throne. As night fell, Sizwe and his men crept through the compound. They knew the guards' routines and easily overpowered them. Soon they reached the main hall where Prince Nkosi, Sizwe's older brother and the rightful heir, was meeting with advisors. Sizwe burst through the doors, his spear raised. "Brother," he shouted, "your time is over." Nkosi jumped to his feet, shock written across his face. Sizwe, what is the meaning of this? But there was no time for explanations. Sizwe's warriors poured into the room, attacking anyone who stood in their way. The advisors fell quickly, their blood staining the floor. Nkosi fought bravely, but he was outnumbered. Just as Sizwe's spear was about to pierce his chest, a figure leaped between them. It was Thandi, Nkosi's friend and a skilled warrior in her own right. "Run," she yelled to Nkosi as she parried Sizwe's blow. "I'll hold them off." Nkosi hesitated, not wanting to leave her behind. But Thandi's fierce gaze told him he had no choice. He turned and fled, with Sizwe's angry shouts echoing behind him. "Find him," Sizwe roared to his men. "Bring me his head." But Nkosi had disappeared into the night. Sizwe's coup was successful but incomplete. As long as his brother lived, his claim to the throne would be challenged. The next morning, Sizwe stood before the people of Zululand. His voice boomed across the gathered crowd. "King Themba is dead," he announced. "And in these dangerous times the kingdom needs a strong leader. I have taken the throne to protect us all." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some looked confused, others frightened. But Sizwe's warriors were everywhere, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. No one dared to speak out. "My brother Nkosi has fled like a coward," Sizwe continued. "He has abandoned his people in their time of need. I declare him a traitor to the kingdom." Over the next few days, Sizwe moved quickly to secure his power. He called in the clan chiefs and demanded their loyalty. Those who hesitated found themselves stripped of their positions or worse. One evening, as Sizwe sat in the throne room, a guard approached nervously. "My king," he said, bowing low, "we've captured one of Prince Nkosi's friends. He refuses to say where the prince is hiding." Sizwe's narrowed. "Bring him to me." The prisoner was dragged in, bruised and bloodied. Sizwe recognized him as Mandla, one of Nkosi's childhood companions. "Where is my brother?" Sizwe demanded. Mandla spat at Sizwe's feet. "I'll never tell you, usurper." Sizwe's face darkened with rage. He stood up slowly, towering over the kneeling prisoner. "You think you're loyal?" he hissed. "You think you're brave? Let's see how long that lasts." For hours, Mandla's screams echoed through the compound as Sizwe personally tortured him. But even as life slipped away from him, Mandla never revealed Nkosi's location. Sizwe's paranoia grew with each passing day. He saw enemies everywhere. His own half-brothers who might have a claim to the throne were rounded up and executed. Advisors who had served King Themba loyally for years found themselves imprisoned or exiled. The people of Zululand lived in fear. No one knew who might be next to fall victim to Sizwe's suspicions. Families were torn apart as some chose to flee the kingdom rather than live under his rule. Meanwhile, Nkosi and Thandi had found refuge in a small village near the border. They lived in hiding, always looking over their shoulders. But they were not idle. Slowly, carefully, they began to gather supporters. One night, as they sat around a small fire, Thandi turned to Nkosi. "We can't hide forever," she said softly. "The people need you." Nkosi sighed heavily. "I know. But Sizwe's grip on power is strong. We need more time, more allies." "Then we'll find them," Thandi said firmly. "We'll build an army if we have to." Your brother must be stopped." Back in the royal compound, Sizwe was growing increasingly unstable. He rarely slept, convinced that assassins lurked in every shadow. His advisors walked on eggshells, never knowing what might set off his temper. They all danced to his tones and doing whatever he said to make him happy. One morning, a breathless messenger arrived at the gates. "My king," he called out, "I have news of Prince Nkosi." Sizwe's eyes lit up with a manic gleam. "Bring him to me at once." The messenger was ushered into the throne room, where he knelt before Sizwe. "Speak," Sizwe commanded. "My king, there are rumors that Prince Nkosi has been seen in the eastern villages. Some say he is gathering an army to challenge you." Sizwe leaped to his feet, his face contorted with fury. "An army? He dares!" He turned to his guards. "Prepare the warriors. We march at dawn." The next day, Sizwe led a large force towards the eastern part of the kingdom. They moved from village to village, questioning the inhabitants roughly. Anyone suspected of helping Nkosi was dragged away. In one small village, an old woman stood up to Sizwe. "You are no true king," she said, her voice quavering but strong. "You rule through fear, not love. The people remember Nkosi's kindness." Sizwe's response was swift and brutal. He ordered the entire village burned to the ground as an example to others. As the flames rose into the sky, Sizwe turned to his warriors. "Let this be a lesson," he snarled. "Those who stand against me will be destroyed." But the old woman's words had struck a chord. As news of the village's destruction spread, more and more people began to whisper of resistance. Nkosi's name was spoken in hushed tones, a symbol of hope against Sizwe's tyranny. Months passed, and Sizwe's rule grew more oppressive. The once prosperous kingdom began to suffer. Crops failed as farmers were pressed into Sizwe's ever-growing army. Trade with neighboring kingdoms dwindled as merchants feared to enter Zululand. Sizwe, however, was blind to the kingdom's decline. His only focus was finding and eliminating his brother. He spent vast resources on spies and informants, promising rewards for any information on Nkosi's whereabouts. One day, a ragged man was brought before Sizwe. He claimed to have seen Nkosi in a cave system near the mountains. "Take me there," Sizwe demanded. "If you're lying, your death will be slow." The man led Sizwe and a group of warriors to the caves. They searched for hours, going deeper and deeper into the mountain. But there was no sign of Nkosi. As they emerged, empty-handed and frustrated, Sizwe's rage boiled over. He grabbed the man by the throat. "You've wasted my time," he growled. "Please, my king," the man gasped. "I swear I saw him." Perhaps he moved on. But Sizwe was beyond reason. With a roar, he threw the man off the cliff, watching as he fell to his death on the rocks below. "Let that be a lesson," Sizwe told his shocked warriors. "Failure is not tolerated." Unknown to Sizwe, his brutal actions were driving more and more people to Nkosi's cause. In hidden camps throughout the kingdom, an army was forming. People who had fled Sizwe's rule, warriors disillusioned with his cruelty, even some of Sizwe's own men who had seen too much. They all rallied to Nkosi. Thandi proved to be a skilled strategist, helping to organize and train the growing resistance. Nkosi, for his part, worked tirelessly to unite the various factions, reminding them of the peaceful and prosperous kingdom they had once known under his father's rule. As the resistance grew stronger, small victories began to mount. Supply caravans meant for Sizwe's army were ambushed, messages were intercepted. Sizwe found himself increasingly isolated, unsure who he could trust. One night, as Sizwe paced in his chambers, unable to sleep, a servant approached him nervously. "What is it?" Sizwe snapped. "My king," the servant said, bowing low. "There are rumors. The people speak of Prince Nkosi returning. They say he has an army." Sizwe's eyes widened in fear and anger. An army? Impossible. Where would he get such a force? But deep down, Sizwe knew it was possible. He had driven his people to this with his cruelty and paranoia. In a fit of rage, Sizwe began smashing everything in sight. Vases shattered, tables overturned. The servant fled in terror. When Sizwe finally calmed down, he called for his most trusted general. "We must act now," he said, his voice cold and determined. "Gather every warrior we have. We will crush this rebellion before it can truly begin." The general hesitated. "But my king, if we take all our forces, the capital will be undefended." Sizwe's eyes flashed dangerously. "Are you questioning me? Do it, or join the traitors." And so, Sizwe led his army out of the capital, leaving it virtually unguarded. They marched towards the last rumored location of Nkosi's forces, burning and pillaging as they went. But Nkosi was always one step ahead. Every time Sizwe thought he had cornered his brother, he found only abandoned camps and false trails. As Sizwe's frustration grew, his army's morale plummeted. Warriors began to desert, slipping away in the night. Those who remained were exhausted and demoralized. Nkosi was always one step ahead. What Sizwe didn't know was that Nkosi had developed an extensive network of spies and supporters throughout the kingdom. These loyal individuals, ranging from common farmers to disgruntled members of Sizwe's own court, kept Nkosi informed of his brother's every move. One evening, as Nkosi and Thandi sat in their hidden camp, a messenger arrived breathless with news. "It was Ibe. My prince," Ibe panted. "Sizwe's army is headed this way. They'll be here by morning." Nkosi nodded calmly. "Thank you, Ibe. Your loyalty will not be forgotten." After the messenger left, Thandi turned to Nkosi. "What's the plan?" Nkosi smiled. "The same as always. We move." Throughout the night, Nkosi's followers quietly packed up the camp. By dawn, when Sizwe's army arrived, they found nothing but cold ashes and confusing trails leading in multiple directions. Sizwe's roar of frustration echoed through the empty forest. "How does he always know?" he raged at his generals. "There must be traitors among us." Meanwhile, miles away, Nkosi was already planning his next move. He gathered his most trusted advisors around a makeshift map of the kingdom. "Sizwe's becoming more erratic," Nkosi explained. "He's left the capital virtually undefended in his mad chase after us." Thandi leaned in, her eyes sharp. "This could be our chance." Nkosi nodded. "Exactly. But we need to be smart about this. We can't just rush in." Over the next few days, Nkosi put his plan into action. He sent small groups of his followers back to their home villages, spreading word of his imminent return. These individuals also served as eyes and ears, reporting on Sizwe's movements and the people's sentiments. Nkosi also reached out to neighboring kingdoms, some of which had grown wary of Sizwe's unstable rule. He secured promises of support, both in terms of warriors and supplies. As Sizwe continued his fruitless search, becoming more desperate and violent with each passing day, Nkosi's support grew. People who had once been afraid to speak out against Sizwe now whispered Nkosi's name with hope. One of Nkosi's most daring moves was to send Thandi herself into the capital city in disguise. Her mission was to make contact with those still loyal to Nkosi and prepare for his return. Thandi moved through the city carefully, using a network of safe houses. She met with former royal guards, merchants, and even some of Sizwe's advisors who had grown disillusioned with his rule. "Prince Nkosi still lives," she told them in hushed meetings. "He hasn't forgotten his people. Be ready. The time to act will come soon." Back in the wilderness, Nkosi continued to lead Sizwe on a wild goose chase. He left false clues and started rumors that sent Sizwe's army scrambling from one end of the kingdom to the other. With each failed attempt to catch Nkosi, more of Sizwe's warriors deserted. Some melted back to their villages. Others, hearing rumors of Nkosi's return, actively sought out the exiled prince to join his cause. Finally, after weeks of planning and preparation, Nkosi decided it was time to make his move. He sent a message to Thandi in the capital: "The lion returns to his pride." This set off a flurry of activity in the city. Nkosi's supporters began to quietly arm themselves and take up strategic positions. As dawn broke, Nkosi and his army approached the capital. Thanks to Thandi's work, the city gates swung open without resistance. Sizwe's remaining loyalists found themselves quickly overwhelmed as citizens joined Nkosi's forces in the streets. By midday, Nkosi stood in the throne room of the royal compound, the place he had fled from months ago. Thandi was by his side, her eyes shining with triumph. But their victory was not yet complete. Sizwe was still out there with a portion of his army, and he would not give up easily. Nkosi turned to his advisors. "Send messengers to my brother," he commanded. "Tell him the capital has fallen. Tell him it's time to come home and face justice." As the messengers rode out, Nkosi looked out over the city, his city once again. He knew the hardest part was yet to come. Sizwe would not go quietly, and the kingdom had deep wounds that would take time to heal. But for the first time in months, hope blossomed in the hearts of the people. Their true king had returned, guided by wisdom and compassion rather than fear and cruelty. As night fell on the capital, bonfires were lit in celebration. But in the distance, dust clouds rose. Sizwe's army was approaching, setting the stage for a final, decisive confrontation between the brothers. Nkosi stood on the city walls, watching the horizon. "Be ready," he told his followers. "Tomorrow, we fight for the soul of our kingdom." Here comes the end of the story. Hopefully Nkosi careful plans will hopefully help him conquer his brother Sizwe. Thanks for watching. Please do well to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more stories.